You are listening to a series of 10 podcasts on American political parties and campaigns, presented by Citizen U. Episode 5. Summarize the difference between presidential and congressional campaigns and elections. Assess the difference between normal and nationalized elections. Political parties are not the only linkage institution. There are other linkage institutions that are important as well. Another important linkage institution are political campaigns and elections. The sine qua non of any democracy are free and fair publicly held elections. In our democracy, national elections are held every 2 years. Every 4 years, we hold a presidential election. In presidential election years, there are also congressional elections. Midterm elections are held 2 years into a president's term. These elections are reserved primarily for congressional offices. State and local elections are held even more frequently. Before elections are held, there are political campaigns. Campaigns serve the purpose of introducing candidates to the voters. They tend to be long, require large amounts of campaign finance, and often are characterized by nasty and negative television ads. Without campaigns, however, we would not be able to accurately judge the character of our candidates. Money cannot get you elected. There are a number of critical elements to running a successful political campaign. First, you need to get mentioned. There has to be an acknowledgement by certain elites or a collective mass of people that you are both qualified and desirable as a candidate. Image and likability have a lot to do with this, and plays an important role in any successful campaign. Once mentioned, you will need to create a formidable campaign organization. This starts with a handler. Handlers are the brains behind any campaign. With a staff of media and marketing experts, handlers attempt to brand candidates like you would a product in the grocery store. This involves finding the right slogans and messages. Critical to any candidate and campaign are running successful TV ads. Barnstorming across the country involves a ground game. When running for president, an advanced staff with resources must be in place in all 50 states. Thousands of volunteers are needed to make calls, knock on doors, create posters, and even write speeches and press releases. The modern campaign has also seen the necessity to debate your opponent. These debates usually are less about what is said and more about how it is said. Journalists lob gotcha questions hoping for candidates to slip up or make verbal mistakes. We watch for bloopers. Nevertheless, these debates play an important role in introducing candidates to a wider national audience. National campaigns often look for what is called an October surprise. Despite all of the planning and scripted activity, some outside news event or unexpected crisis changes the dynamic of most campaigns. For President Bush, these surprises usually involved terrorist attacks, and for candidate Obama, the financial meltdown made it more difficult for McCain to challenge in 2008. Lest we forget, in the end, we the people vote. It is our vote that legitimizes campaign activity. Slick ads and fancy images do not assure victory. In the end, the most votes is the only way to win an election. This is easier said than done. What conclusions can we make about the modern political campaign? They are much longer. They are far more expensive. As noticed, they are much more democratic. Campaign professionals and consultants have taken on a much more important role. The media covers campaigns more like a horse race. Emphasis is given to who is in the lead, according to the latest polling data. In-depth coverage on the issues is unlikely. Political parties have grown less important in the process. Regional blocs are more and more important. Republicans count on the solid South for support, while Democrats rely on coastal regions. And finally, because turnout in the primaries is characterized by base voters, a much smaller number, candidates tend to be far more ideological than the average voter in the general election. Ironically, this means that our political process is far more welcoming to more radical candidates on both sides of the political spectrum. It is for this reason that our politics in Washington appears to be more polarized than what is actually believed in the heartland. Voter turnout in elections remains low. In presidential years, one hopes to exceed 50% of eligible voters in the general election. Turnout in the primaries is much lower. Voter turnout in midterm elections rarely exceeds 40%. Today's elections have too many undervotes and overvotes. Undervotes are those who choose not to vote. Overvotes are those who have spoiled their ballots by improperly marking them. When congressional elections are nationalized, meaning focused attention on a major issue, turnout tends to be higher. So too is the rate of incumbent defeat. More often, elections are localized, focusing on local issues. When this is so, incumbent rates are quite high. Incumbency is the likelihood of winning re-election. Incumbency rates in the House of Representatives often reach 90%, though a little lower in the Senate. We may hold our Congress in disregard, but most tend to be re-elected anyway. More than anything else, this is due to turnout in the primaries. Remember, most of us stay home for this phase. The party base dominates primary election turnout. You are listening to a series of 10 podcasts on American political parties and campaigns, presented by Citizen U.